Welcome to this video lecture on Intro to Cameras in Art 142, Intro to Digital Photography. In this video, we will learn a little bit about the introduction of cameras in our process to understand a little bit about the tool that we'll use to make all these great pictures. So we're going to look at the parts of a digital SLR or a non-digital SLR. So we have two photos or two little diagrams going on. So photography is all about light and its reflection on a recording medium, whether it is your camera sensor or film. So light comes in, and when you first look at through your camera, not taking a picture, and this is assuming you're using a digital SLR, or even if you have used a film camera in the past. So a mirror will pop up and hit a prism, a pentaprism, because there's 5. So go up, down, and back through the viewfinder so you can preview the scene. When you click your shutter, it moves the mirror and light will record on the recording medium, whether it is your camera sensor or film. Here's another diagram, and this one includes the lens. So the mirror is not your shutter. Your shutter is a separate mechanism, but the mirror will open and close as you work. So the whole theory starts off with camera obscura, which is dark room. So it was a way for people to view images through a tiny hole aperture. So it would reflect out upside down. So you have your object, your darkened room with a hole aperture, and you can see the light is reflecting it upside down. So here's another example, another diagram. We have a candle, which is light coming through a hole, and it's reflected back on this other panel upside down. People would use this method for drawing. Is it cheating if they're tracing? And you can see how artists have used the camera obscura for their own methods. There's also a large camera obscura in Photograph Gallery, which is really fun. I've included the link to it. And this is what it looks like inside. So if we talk about photography, we have to talk about film. And you may have taken the Art 131 class, and it all comes down to film, which was, well, previously it was glass panels, tintypes, ambrotypes, but film is sort of the idea of what you think of traditional photography, and that's sort of the recording medium. And this may look really familiar to you. Loading film up, look at all that film just being exposed just for this one photograph. What a waste. Here's an early example of the first successful color process. And here's an example of a contact sheet, a color contact sheet, which we'll be doing digital contact sheets this semester. So it's an idea of what they tend to look like. Early digital cameras. So this one was one of the earliest digital camera. It had issues recording data. The camera read light and recorded information in numbers on a cassette. And this was a black and white image, very archaic, but this technology led us to other digital cameras. Here's examples of weird digital early cameras. And then we have the digital SLR, which sort of was very expensive. It was 1.3 megapixel. Not even your iPhone does that. But it met the needs of photojournalists. But it was really important because it had removable memory cards and enough sensitivity so that you can take the picture and immediately go to press without having to wait for printing and processing of film. Another early examples of digital cameras, I believe this one printed, floppy disks. I think I had this one. I think I had this one too. So I see some ones that I've used when I was a young budding photographer. And photography has really changed, digital photography has really changed on how we see and think of, how do we share and think of an image. Flickr came up, how photographers were able to connect with their communities. Photographers still tend to work in darkroom. If you've taken the darkroom class, you understand the love and excitement of darkroom photography. The iPhone has definitely changed the landscape of digital photography, putting a high-quality camera in everyone's pocket. Now, we're not using iPhones for our class. We are learning about manual exposure. So if you're using a phone, I will know because of EXIF data. Common camera companies, Canon, Nikon, Sony, Pentax, Olympus, Fujifilm. There's more on this list, but these tend to be the most popular. Again, a digital camera is something that you'll tend to use. We'll talk about lenses a little bit more in depth. But if you have a kit lens, which is 18 to 55 millimeter, it is what a lot of basic camera kits come with. That's why it's called a kit lens. It's pretty decent wide angle, but you have the ability to zoom. And the next popular lens is a 50 millimeter, which is a fixed lens. It's low cost. I got mine for less than $100, and it's my favorite lens. It's lightweight. It's close to what the human eye sees. Typically they have a low aperture, so you can allow in a lot of light. The next most popular is 85 or 100 millimeter. It is a fixed lens, good for portraiture. Get that wide angle, but it softens that background detail. And it gets you to step back a little further away. A wide angle lens, so this could be like a 10 to 42. 35 is really popular. It's one I want next. This gives you to capture a wider angle of view. Sometimes gives that distortion. Think a little bit of skater videos that have that fisheye distortion. Wider it is, the more distorted the barrel tends to be. And telephoto lens. So this is very narrow depth of field. Long lenses, those are great for if you're going for the distance. Tripods are really important. You can pick up a fairly cost-effective tripod on Amazon or even at Target. Something to help you balance your camera, especially so you can shoot at slower shutter speeds, capture long exposures, and even probably do self-portraits. Definitely memory cards. We'll talk about clearing out your memory cards every time you shoot for file organization. But memory cards, having a few on hand is always really great. Camera bag, you always have to store and carry your items. Doesn't have to be a fancy one, but something to carry it and that meets your needs as a daily photographer. A good way to transfer your memory card. So a lot of cameras have the smaller SD cards, and some of them have the larger CF cards. But a lot of CF cards, you need sort of a transporter to transport it. But a lot of computers come with SD card readers, which are really helpful, or you can use a cord to connect your camera. You want to take the best care of your camera. Remember, it is your tool. You always want to take your lens cap back on. Try not to lose it. I know I lose mine a lot. Don't leave it in your you the high heat or the cold. You Humidity is not our friend, but that's usually not our problem, nor are freezing temperatures, but the dust can damage your camera. If you are trying to clean your camera, try to use a blower to remove any dust or lint. If you're going to get your camera fully cleaned, I do recommend using a professional for it. When you change lenses, do it quickly and actually hold your camera down when you change your lenses. Use 2 hands when shooting. Definitely try to wear their camera strap. And last thing I want to point out is if your camera has these weird dots, these kind of grayish orbs, that means your camera sensor is dirty and it needs to be cleaned. This is something I recommend you get cleaned by a professional. We have places around the valley that will clean your camera, or that might be something you may want to mail in to a service. So I hope this was pretty helpful to introduce yourself a little bit about cameras, how they work, and whatnot. There is a video module that is really interesting on the history of cameras that I recommend you view. And there's a few other great links.